Hey guys, so I know this isn't watercolor and I'm sorry if you're disappointed, but I thought today I would walk you through my photographic processes if you're interested, if you follow what I do with my photography, just so I could get this footage off of my computer, so that I can make more room for new videos and start making my next video. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope this is somewhat informative and you learn something from it. So what I was trying to was a mermaid being suffocated by a plastic bag, and I know that sounds sadistic, but it is meant to represent the effect we're all having on the environment with plastics going into the ocean and killing turtles, killing all kinds of sea creatures, fish, everything really, just polluting the environment overall. It's just not good. It's not fun. I'll probably put a link below where you can donate or help out some kind of charity to help stop this or to help clean up the planet. But yeah, it's sort of supposed to humanize, or not so much humanize, but to show a slightly more human form in the position of a sea turtle or a creature that is suffering because of our waste. And yeah, that's sort of what it's meant to represent, and it's supposed to give the audience empathy because it's a more human-like figure rather than an animal that you probably have no connection to. I don't know, maybe you really like mermaids and it just appealed to you, but that's sort of the message behind this piece. So I hope you enjoy it, I guess. For obvious reasons, I've had to censor some things, so just ignore that. So what I did first was I put in just a free image of a sea star or a starfish, which I was going to put one on each breast as sort of like, instead of the seashell, I prefer starfish or sea stars. I think they look a little bit better, has a bit more color to it. So that's what I tried to add in first, which was quite difficult because it was semi-transparent. Also, the lighting was a lot different to what I was working with in this photo, which I took in a very dark environment with just a tiny bit of light coming through from a turquoise sort of green light. So I found that didn't really work at all, so I had to find a different photo of a starfish to include, which looked a little bit better. I didn't mind it too much, but it didn't look realistic, it didn't look right. So I fiddled around with that a bit and then decided no, this isn't going to work, and I just went with the next thing. I used masking tools to remove areas around the starfish so that it would look like it was on the skin, and I just used the selection tool or the patch tool as a selection tool, which I have a habit of doing that, and I'd select areas, feather them, and then darken the edges to make it look like it was going around that area and sort of like fitting with the roundness of the shape, I guess. I darkened each of them in curves, each of the images in curves, to sort of match the lighting that I had going. So I just dragged it down really, added a few little highlights maybe to sort of not make it too dark, and then altered the colors using color balance. So yeah, that's really it for that part. Then I went in and used the, oh, what's it called? The skew tool or the warp? I think it's the warp tool to bend the shapes to sort of fit correctly over the area and look more realistic, if that makes sense. I made a layer copy of the layer with the sea star or starfish, then flipped it and put it on the other side to sort of like replicate it, and then did some rotating and warping to make it look a little different to the other one. Then used the patch tool to sort of patch up lighter areas to make it look like they're not identical, so they look slightly different, if that makes sense. I then darkened them a bit and added cyan to sort of reflect that cyan sort of color coming through in the lighting, and not sort of, so it wouldn't stand out too much and actually look realistic. Then I began adding shadows again by feathering selected areas and trying to really look where shadows would actually occur in that lighting situation, which was a bit hard because I had a lamp in my room covered with like a sheer black fabric, so it was very low light coming from one angle across my face from the right, and then I also had from the left this blue-green tone. So it was very confusing. Also, I had shadows going on from the tripod, so those I tried to edit out later. I used the patch tool and the clone tool to sort of remove the space between my legs so that it would become one, kind of like how a mermaid tail would be. And then I got a free image of a goldfish and stuck that over the top, which was probably not the greatest idea. It wasn't. I should have experimented a bit more, but at that point I had it. I was kind of like frustrated with trying to get the starfish to look like they were actually there, and I still wasn't happy with them. So I just whacked on a goldfish and then used the mask tool to remove like the fins and the face and just have the tail, which I then warped a bit, and I think I used the liquefier tool to fill it out and make it look like it was in the shape of a mermaid body or mermaid tail and not so much in the shape of a goldfish. Once I was happy with the shape and how it was fitting on the body, I then went into curves and played around with lighting and then colors in color balance and selective color and saturation. I sort of brought the saturation down quite a bit because it is such a dark image. I think I settled on, instead of that bright orange, which was just so vulgar and conflicting, I settled on something that was more silvery and slightly blue, so it looked like the highlights were reflecting the cyan color coming in from above me. So I think that went all right. I wasn't quite happy with it. I started working on adding shadows with the selection and feathering method in curves to the sides to sort of show that it's fitting the shape of my body, and added some shadows at the bottom as well so that it had kind of a vignette and sort of showed the depth of the water. as well, because obviously as you're underwater, it's getting darker the further down you are. And I then tried to blend the tail with my body, which didn't work so well. I couldn't manage to do it very well at all. Nothing was really working. I tried the clone tool on a low transparency. I tried the patch tool, which didn't really work either. I tried a couple more things. I don't really remember what I was doing, but it just wasn't really having it. So I just kept going, and then I sort of started working on the face for a bit to distract myself so I could come back. So with the face, I was bringing out highlights on the plastic bag and taking ones away that were too strong, and just working on the colors, saturation, and predominantly highlights and shadows and where they belong. I did some more darkening after that of the tail and manipulating it a bit by warping it into different positions to see how it would look. And then I added blues. I think it was after that I added like cyan to the background, various parts of the background, which was my carpet, and then selected it and went into the blur filter. I think I used Gaussian blur to blur those areas to make it look smooth, like I was underwater and not lying on my carpet. So it didn't have that texture, it had that smooth sort of look to it. Added a texture, like a creamy texture over the top, and then sort of played around with that a bit. And I think I stuck with the hard light option on that, and then just removed areas that I thought were too much. The mask tool, like ones that were obstructing the face and things like areas that I wanted to highlight. So I removed those parts, and then I created a light coming through with the selection and feather method, using curves but dragging it upwards to create light coming in across my face and body. And then I added highlights to the hair as well. In the final stages, I played around with highlights on the plastic bag in my face again before messing about with colors. I think I added magenta, like magentas and warm red yellow tones, particularly to the mid-tones, to sort of give it a bit of warmth and also contrast against that cool kind of oceanic environment and the cyan that was in the ocean I had created behind me. And then after fiddling with that for a bit, I think I added a highlight in the water as well, a couple of highlights, and used the paint tool to add things in. And then I wasn't really altogether happy with how it looked, so I added another texture over the top. I think it was the same one, and then I just fiddled around with it until like to create contrast until it looked like I wanted it to, then just fiddled with the highlights again so that it wasn't too dark in the image. There was still some light coming in. So that's how I created this image, and I hope you enjoyed this video. and I hope you learned something. Let me know if you want me to do this again as like an occasional thing. Yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.